Due to some glitchy audio, there has been much debate about what Neil Armstrong said as he became the first human to step onto the moon during the Apollo 11 mission. For the longest time, people have assumed he said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." However, Armstrong himself confirmed that what he actually said during the live broadcast all those years ago was, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." While the phrase, "well-behaved women seldom make history," has often been attributed to Marilyn Monroe, she wasn't the one who said it all. The quote came from Harvard history professor and author Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. Monroe can actually be credited with saying, "If I'd observed all the rules, I'd never have got anywhere," a quote with a pretty similar meaning to Ulrich's. It has been a long-standing rumor that Queen Victoria said, "We are not amused," in response to a dirty joke she heard from an aide. As it turns out, the rumor was anything but true and was allegedly made up by someone at court. The Queen's granddaughter confirmed this in a 1976 interview. You may want to pause before posting the famous quote by Martin Luther King Jr., which starts like this: "I mourn the loss of thousands of precious lives, but I will not rejoice in the passing of one, not even an enemy." Interestingly enough, this phrase in particular wasn't said by King, but the rest of the quote was. Turns out, a 24-year-old's initial thoughts on Facebook status got mixed up with King's actual words from his book, Strength to Love. It's long been assumed that philosopher Henry David Thoreau wrote in his book Walden, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined." Turns out, the real quote is actually, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." The quote, "A little knowledge is a dangerous thing," has long been attributed to Albert Einstein. As it turns out, not only did Einstein not say those words, but the quote itself isn't accurate at all. Alexander Pope, an English poet who coined the phrase, actually said, "A little learning is a dangerous thing." It's a common misconception that Paul Revere was heard yelling, "The British are coming," during his 1775 ride, where he delivered warnings to colonists about British troops approaching. In reality, to keep his mission under wraps, it's said that he actually yelled, "The regulars are coming instead." The iconic line, "Hello, Clarice," is never actually said by Anthony Hopkins' character Hannibal Lecter in the 1991 film The Silence of the Lambs. In the movie, the greeting Lecter actually says to Jodie Foster's character is, "Good morning, Clarice," which is far less chilling than the former. The famous line, "The only two certainties in life are death and taxes," has often been attributed to writer and humorist Mark Twain. However, this iconic phrase actually dates back to the 1700s, which is over a century before Twain was even born. As it so happens, two lesser-known writers, Christopher Bullock and Edward Ward, are responsible for two different variations of the quote. Although there's no evidence that a young George Washington said the words, "I cannot tell a lie," after an incident involving his family's cherry tree, it remains an enduring myth. It's believed that author Mason Locke Weems completely invented the story to promote Washington's image as an honest and virtuous leader in a biography written after his passing. It has long been believed that astronaut Jack Swigert said the words, "Houston, we have a problem," during the Apollo 13 mission on April 13, 1970. This is because the spaceship's commander, Jim Lovell, played by Tom Hanks, says the famous line in the 1995 film Apollo 13. But the truth is, Swigert really said, "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." The well-known quote, "Beam me up, Scotty," wasn't said by William Shatner as Captain Kirk in Star Trek, but it's a common misconception. In reality, Shatner did say similar ones, such as "Scotty, beam us up," or "beam me up," but due to spoofs and the title of Shatner's memoir, the misquote gained popularity anyway. What Darth Vader says to Luke Skywalker in their famous fight scene in Star Wars. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, has long been misremembered by fans. Darth Vader actually says, "No, I am your father," and not "Luke, I am your father," like everyone believes. The popular misquote comes from a large number of Star Wars fans sharing the wrong line over the years. What Darth Vader says to Luke Skywalker in their famous fight scene in Star Wars. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, has long been misremembered by fans. Darth Vader actually says, "No, I am your father," and not "Luke, I am your father," like everyone believes. The popular misquote comes from a large number of Star Wars fans sharing the wrong line over the years. As it turns out, the notorious phrase, "let them eat cake," that has long been attributed to Marie Antoinette, was likely never said by her at all. Historians dug up some evidence in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions from the 1760s that another great princess had coined the notorious phrase long before Marie Antoinette became queen. While it's widely thought that Admiral Horatio Nelson said, "I see no ships," as he famously ignored signals from his commanding officer during the Battle of Copenhagen, this isn't accurate. In reality, his actual words were, "I have a right to be blind sometimes. I really do not see the signal." While it's true that explorer and journalist Henry Morton Stanley found missionary David Livingstone living in Ujiji, Tanzania, it has long been debated whether Stanley said, "Dr. Livingstone," I presume, when they first met. The debate mostly comes from the fact that neither of the men mentioned the statement in their accounts of the encounter. In fact, it's widely believed that Stanley just made it up. While Andrew Jackson was a prominent 19th century U.S. Army general, the idea that he said the quote, "Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes," is largely false. The phrase actually dates back to the American Revolutionary period and was coined by Colonel William Prescott during the 1775 Battle of Bunker Hill. During his 1940 speech to the House of Commons on Britain's fight against Germany, Winston Churchill didn't exactly say, "We shall fight them on the beaches," like most people believe. He actually said, "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." President Theodore Roosevelt isn't only famous for being one of America's favorite presidents, but also for the expression, "walk softly, but carry a big stick." However, this isn't really what he said. The actual expression he was fond of and used frequently was, "speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far." While some people think Tom Hanks' character, Forrest Gump, says, "Life is like a box of chocolates," what he actually says is, "My mama always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." Gump's line is said in the past tense since he's quoting his mother's past words. Most people believe that Marie Antoinette coldly said, "Let them eat cake," when told that the peasants had no bread. However, there's no record of her ever saying it. The quote actually appeared in Rousseau's writings years before she was even queen. The line elementary, "My dear Watson," is one of the most famous in pop culture, but Sherlock Holmes never actually said it in any of Arthur Conan Doyle's stories. The phrase was popularized later in film adaptations. People often quote Gandhi as saying, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." In reality, he said something longer and more nuanced about self-transformation being the first step towards societal change. The phrase, "the ends justify the means," is widely attributed to Machiavelli, but those exact words never appear in the Prince. The idea is a simplified summary of his political philosophy. "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," is often linked to Voltaire. In truth, it was written by Evelyn Beatrice Hall to summarize his beliefs, not a direct quote. The quote, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results," is often attributed to Einstein. However, there's no evidence he ever said or wrote it. It appeared decades later in an anonymous publication. Many believe Walt Disney said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." In fact, the quote was created by a Disney Imaginer named Tom Fitzgerald for an Epcot attraction years after Disney's death. "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing," is a powerful line attributed to Burke, but it doesn't appear in any of his writings or speeches. Its origin remains unclear. The phrase, "well-behaved women seldom make history," is often linked to Monroe, but it was actually written by historian Laurel Thatcher Ulrich in 1976. lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth puts on its shoes is a witty saying usually credited to Mark Twain, but it originated with Jonathan Swift in the early 1700s. God helps those who help themselves is often mistaken for a biblical verse, but it's nowhere in the Bible. The line was coined by Benjamin Franklin in his Poor Richard's Almanac. The famous saying, "If you want peace, prepare for war," is usually attributed to Julius Caesar, but it actually comes from the Roman writer Futages centuries later. After the Pearl Harbor attack, many believe Admiral Yamamoto said, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant." There's no evidence he ever said this. It was invented for a 1970 movie. For decades, people thought Armstrong said, "One small step for man," but he later clarified he had said for a man, emphasizing that small words' huge difference in meaning.